Jonathan and John Tear. We started this tradition. John, how many years ago? Where'd John go?
I think literally the first year.
So 5 years, yeah, we might have missed one for COVID, but I think we're really excited to bring the message across the state. It is a condensed version. You don't have to worry. There's no Yoda voice. And thanks to Representative Brown and Representative Parenti, Representative Lavallee, actually Michael Doherty was there too. They did sit through the 1 hour version of this. This was only 58 minutes, so you don't have to worry about that. But it is great to be here, and thank you, Mayor Brockett, for hosting us, members of the City Council. In 2 years, our state will turn 150 years old, just 2 years from now. And we are really reminded of the pivotal moments in our state history, our county's history. And I launched this State of the State address by reflecting on the words of President Kennedy at Rice University in 1962. We choose to go to the moon in this decade, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. And so specifically, we look forward to working with the legislature on addressing issues that aren't easy. And one of those that is front and center for so many of us as residents of Colorado and Boulder County, but also as business owners in Boulder County and the state, is housing. It is very difficult to be able to afford a place to live in our wonderful county, in our wonderful state. And that in turn is not only challenging for individuals who need a roof over their head, who might have to live further out, have longer commute times, less time away from their families, more money on gas, worse, bigger climate impact and less water efficiency, but also very difficult for businesses to attract, recruit, retain people to fill jobs that are open today in Boulder County and across the state. So as we move forward, we are focused on housing and, of course, tying in housing to transit. The two are very much related. And public safety. And I'm glad Michael Doherty's another one who's a twofer. Where'd he go? He was at my other speech as well. Thank you, Michael, for joining us, along with a number of DAs and law enforcement, members of law enforcement as well. We appreciate that. In order to make sure that our state and Boulder County remain a great place to live and raise a family and launch a business, we've got to make our county and state more affordable. And when the way families experience cost, housing is the biggest cost, rent or mortgage. After that, healthcare. But housing is the single biggest cost that people experience, whether they experience as rent or as mortgage. And as business owners and members of the chamber, many of you struggle to recruit the talent your businesses need due to the high cost of housing. Some companies are even leaving Boulder because they want to be here, but their employees can't afford a place to live nearby. Last year, I visited the ribbon cutting for Hearst Precision's new facility, moving to Frederick because the cost of living was better for their employees. And with their new facility, they could build a new training lab. So we've got to create more housing in our state that people at all income levels can afford to rent or buy, near communities where they want to live and near job opportunities. That also means less traffic on our roads, less air pollution, and more livability of our communities. And last year, we took an important step, and I want to thank Representative Lindstedt and Senator Gonzalez. We banned growth caps that outlawed new housing altogether that several communities had. I signed an executive order that removed bureaucratic barriers, cut through red tape on at least the projects that are funded through Department of Local Affairs, through DOLA, getting our response time down to 90 days, which had been closer to a year on turning around. So the state is getting our act in order. But we also put our skin in the game, but we also know we need to work together to really build on that process. I want to thank, of course, Mayor Brockett, the majority of the Boulder City Council, for being key members of the coalition last year that came very, very close to getting something very important done in this area. Many of the ideas are coming back in hopefully better ways, but also being paired with transit. We always knew that we thought, housing, and then the next session we do transit. Now, both together have advantages, because part of what we hear, and rightly so, from mayors across the metro area is transit plan communities, great idea, but how can we be sure that if we do this work, transit actually occurs? How do we have confidence in the transit? And of course, Boulder has had that experience for a number of years as well. So I think by making sure we have the reforms and the resources around transit, combined with the transit-oriented communities piece, including fiscal support and tax credits to make this a reality, we can really do a better job making sure people can live near job centers and on transit lines. Transit-oriented and connected communities can really create a better future for our state, reduce traffic, increase livability, reduce costs. The average commuting cost, gas alone, is $1,800, and the average Coloradan spends 52 hours a year stuck in traffic. That's more than an entire work week out of 50 work weeks a year, 48 work weeks a year. An entire work week is what we spend stuck in traffic, and that's getting worse unless we don't do what's easy and do what's hard, right? Easy thing, continue with the default, right? Housing becomes less expensive, there's more exurbance for all, traffic gets worse. We don't want that to happen. It's time for a course correction here. Let's make it so Colorado gets better, more affordable, less traffic, better air quality, more livability over the next 5 or 10 years instead of worse, and that's a challenge before us. And by the way, investing in passenger rail is one of those ways, and making sure that we get done the Fast Track's promise of train service from Union Station to Boulder and Longmont. And that's not just the Boulder message that was in the state as our representatives can attest. This was due in 2017. We all understand, a delay of a year or two, but as I've said many times, 2040 I think is unacceptable. This needs to happen in the next few years. It will happen in the next few years with the right action from the state legislature, North Front Range Rail, and then we view this as part of, and probably the first part that's on service of Front Range Passenger Rail, which is Pueblo to Fort Collins. But certainly delivering on the promise of Fast Tracks is absolutely critical, and we can do that with a joint effort between CDOT, RTD, and the Front Range Rail District, which we established 2 years ago working with the legislature. By doing this, we can save people time and money, reduce traffic, free up resources for people to support local businesses, improve our air quality. We need to show that we can get this done, and we look forward to working with the legislature to do that. In addition, we also talked about our ambitious plans for Front Range Rail, Pueblo to Fort Collins. That'll be a couple of years after Northwest. And then also Mountain Rail, which is on a very aggressive time frame. So this is similar time frame over the next few years to Northwest Rail, Mountain Rail, Denver to it's already, of course, Winter Park, but more service year round, and then Steamboat, and then Hayden and Craig. So that is all existing track, all very doable thanks to unprecedented federal investment for the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act and rail. And we look forward to doing our piece to make that happen. Which will be very exciting, of course, for Boulder County residents. So again, you get the Steamboat in a few years. You can take Fast Tracks to Denver, or hopefully transportation to the West Jefferson County hub that will then be going right up to Winter Park or Steamboat. And I think there's also discussion of a Rawlingsville stop that would be accessible to Eldora. So that will all happen in the next few years, and we look forward to working with the legislature, RTD, and the Front Range Rail District and CDOT to get that done. We've really gotten our Department of Transportation into the long-haul transit business. We do, maybe you've been on them, we do bus staying, Pegasus, ski staying, a number of routes that we operate, very successful, over 300,000 riders that otherwise presumably would have been in single occupancy vehicles just last year. So when we grew that from very close to zero when I became governor. We also know that without feeling safe in our communities, not feeling safe is really a great judgment to our quality of life. And 2 years ago, we set the goal of making Colorado one of the 10 safest states in the country. And we're making important investments right here in Boulder County, grants to recruit and retain officers, strengthen community engagements. We supported the Boulder Sheriff's Recruitment Project and Post-Academy Tuition Project, the CU Boulder Police Department. We supported co-response models through the City of Boulder, Boulder Community Services, crime prevention and intervention grants at Bridge House Boulder's Ready to Work program. So we wanted to, working with the legislature, empower these great municipal, county, and NGOs across the state to be able to do more of the work that they are doing to improve public safety. And this has been an area that historically the state had not been involved with. These were locally funded, police, sheriffs, local NGOs. But when we're looking at a statewide model to make all of Colorado safer, we said we don't want to reinvent what's going on. We just want to add state support to these wonderful initiatives that are occurring at the local level. Maybe it's helping the sheriff's department recruit and retain great people. Maybe it's helping a community after-school program or youth intervention program. And so we did get those grants out, and we're working with the legislature on continuing that successful model. The early indications are positive. Auto theft across our state decreased 24% last year over the year before. Violent crimes are down as well. But we have a lot more work to do to make Colorado safer. And we look forward to partner with Michael Doherty and your sheriff, your police chief, and many others to get that done. We also are investing in the workforce. And an important part of our vision for Colorado at 150 is making sure that Coloradans have the tools and resources they need to fill in-demand jobs. There's 2 job openings, or actually, I think it's 1.8 job openings for every unemployed Coloradan. But that doesn't mean that every unemployed Coloradan necessarily has the skills to get one of those open jobs. So how do you kind of bridge that gap? We're very excited that we've made community college fully free in a number of in-demand fields: nurse assistant, EMT, firefighting, law enforcement. This is very exciting. So it's fully free, meaning no textbook costs, no registration costs. And I met one young man at Community College of Aurora where we announced his studying to become an EMT. He's now an EMT. And he said, with the money I saved on tuition, I was able to afford to fix my car to get to community college. And that's a good thing. And we're also excited by the innovation at our school district level. St. Brain was one of our larger Opportunity Now grant recipients. They're very good at writing grants. BBSD can learn from that. We got a $7 million partnership with the Boulder Chamber and Boulder Workforce Center to implement the career pathways in education and advanced manufacturing and information technology programs. If you haven't been to their innovation campus, it's absolutely incredible, one of the leading in the state. And we're becoming a national leader in this work. And the other piece we're kind of bolstering, and I would challenge the business community to participate, is apprenticeships. We're working on a tax credit package around apprenticeships from the business side, because we know there's some expenses up front. But really making sure that apprenticeship opportunities are available. People of all ages, but particularly we're focused on high school juniors and seniors, earning while they learn, getting the skills they need to get a good job offer. Businesses benefit tremendously from having the pipeline of folks that they're able to hire right out of high school or help support higher education or certification that they need to be able to hold down a good job. And we're looking to significantly expand the number of apprenticeships across the entire state. So we know that there's a lot of work ahead with the work and support of Kyle Brown and Jen Parenti and Julia Mobile. We'll all be able to get it done. As businesses and community leaders, your voices are very important in this. And I want to thank John Terr and Jonathan Singer, who, while we ultimately weren't successful last year with a lot of the housing work, were a strong advocate and always have been, both at the local and state level, of meeting the housing needs of the businesses and the residents of our state. And we look forward to continuing that partnership to really moving forward, not with what's easy, but with what's hard. But we'll help make sure that the climate to live and work and thrive in our state is better as we approach our 150th birthday. And I'll now turn it back over to Boulder Chamber President and CEO, John Terr, for some questions.
Here, we've got 2 microphones here, so we'll testing 1, 2. All right. The system works. All right, so we went through a series of pretty intense questions, but before that, actually, I'll make reference. A number of lawmakers here are doing a huge amount of work on criminal legal reform, especially as it relates to our homelessness crisis. And so the Boulder Chamber, in conjunction with Visit Boulder, all right, well, I'm just going to speak loudly and see what happens.
Yeah,
So,
try to click it.
click it.
Click it.
You can use this one.
I was
Use
not-
this one.
I was
Just
not,
use, Jonathan, just use this one.
I was not Navy Club. So.
You look like an AD club.
I did not have the sufficient credentials to be an AV club, sadly. But we'll get to that later. So in all seriousness, Visit Boulder and Downtown Boulder Partnership, in conjunction with the Boulder Chamber, created a homeless policy framework. And we really looked at this as a 3-pronged approach, right? You know, how do you solve homelessness? Well, have enough places for people to live. But you also have to have the supportive services in place, which I know Representative Brown is working on through 1331 waivers this year. I know Senator Hawkins Lewis is working on some other reforms. See, I was going to work in the shout out there, and also additional enforcement, which you made reference of. So looking at that, I'm wondering if you can expand a little bit about how we address not just our housing crisis, but the homelessness crisis that we're so desperately feeling here in Boulder.
Hello, Senator Hawkins Lewis. Sorry I didn't see you back there. Any other state representatives or senators? Okay. Thank you for your work on housing as well. One of our champions in the legislature on housing issues. The statewide dimension to the homeless issue that we are focused on is increasing the supply of housing, which is absolutely necessary. And if you look at the cost of rent or the purchase price for homes, obviously, rent being a reflection of what the cost of ownership is. There's a direct correlation between cities with high homeless rates and high costs, and then cities where housing is more affordable. Guess what? There's less people that are homeless. So at some level, that's a very simple formula. It doesn't mean there's not a lot more dimensions to homelessness than there are behavioral health and substance abuse. But certainly statewide, we're focused on the housing supply. We're also first focused on meeting behavioral health needs of residents. And so we are working on, we have as you know, a medium-term sort of substance abuse treatment facility for Lions. We are building an additional one in Aurora that will have, I think, 300 and some beds, and this is for kind of like 3-month residencies, 4-month residencies for people that are having substance abuse issues, usually associated with behavioral health issues, where people can get back on their feet. So those are dimensions for what the state is doing. I know here in Boulder County, there's talk of day shelters and those sorts of things, which can certainly help with livability, enforcement, an important piece of it as well. But we try to focus on kind of, first of all, each city has their own strategies, and that's appropriate. But we focus on kind of that statewide need, and obviously housing and behavioral health, or whether you're in Pueblo or Boulder or Denver or Grand Junction, those are really needed to increase our capacity in those areas. To help whatever the city municipal strategy is to reduce homelessness.
All right, so from housing to transportation, a lot of folks, we can't have good housing policy without transportation. You made great reference to this in your State of the State speech, and repeated it here today. The Boulder Chamber has merged with our transportation management organization, Boulder Transportation Connections. We have Karen Morganhouse standing in the back here. One of the things that you've made mention of is fast tracks, front-range passenger rail, but there are some structural issues that need to be addressed as well. We've heard about RTD reform. We've heard about other transportation reforms that I know Representative Polis sits on the Transportation Legislative Review Committee. Senator Hawkins Lewis has a bill that was just introduced. Can you tell us a little bit about your ideas and thoughts on RTD reform and how that will actually help expedite the process to get Boulder County what was promised?
So fortunately, one of the leaders in this effort represents part of Boulder County. It's her colleague, Representative Lindstedt, Broomfield, and part of Boulder. The other legislative leader in this is Senator Faith Winter, who I don't think she comes into Boulder County, but she's been here many times, and we know her well. So they will be the two that are working on this. And I think what we need to figure out here, and as I said, we need a definitive and very real timeline for getting front range passenger rail done, and more specifically Northwest passenger rail, already overdue, even sooner. And that will require not just RTD alone, it'll be RTD, CDOT, front range passenger rail, all district, which Boulder's a part of, all three of those working together to deliver that in a very prompt time frame. I think we need a regional transportation district that people have confidence in, that delivers projects on or ahead of schedule and under cost, that is expanding service rather than contracting service. And we look forward to working with Representative Lindstedt and Senator Winter to get that done.
You make it sound so easy. All right, so and hopefully it will be. So moving on from transportation and housing to business. what we're seeing, not just downtown, but really across, not just the state, not even the nation, but the world, is commercial vacancy. Huge commercial vacancy rates, and so we're not seeing the same level of economic activity that we would like to see. What are some opportunities that we can work together on at the state level to address the vacancy issue so we can get that economic engine running again?
Well, the obvious thing we all know is that we have under supply of residential and oversupply of commercial. So to the extent that we can redesignate commercial as residential, that's a very good thing. Now, that can't be done every time, it can't be done everywhere, buildings are different. We do look forward to actually creating a tax credit, and that's in our budget, around conversions from commercial to residential. But there's also a piece that I hope, for instance, Boulder City Council is looking at in a thoughtful way, flexibility to convert commercial to residential where appropriate. And that would help with both of those, reducing underutilized or empty office space and increasing living opportunities, usually in areas near job centers, which is usually where more commercial is. So they're generally in good places, but it just depends on the particular building and the infrastructure, whether it's feasible or not in every case. But I think we should start with the attitude of let's see how we can make it feasible and what can we do, and hopefully the state tax credits will provide another tool to do that. I don't know that, obviously people will need offices and commercial space and retail as well, and I think retail continues to do well on Pearl Street Mall and other areas. But I do think the balance has shifted a little bit, and over time, there's just less office space per person now than there was pre-pandemic, and I think that's because more people realize they can work remote or partially work remote in hotel spaces, and I don't know, whether that macro trend is going to change. So I just think we have to figure out how to better utilize and revitalize commercial space, and that includes for cultural, artistic use, housing. I mentioned top priority, but there will always be a solid demand for commercial. But I think we need to think about what this means, kind of with this macro trend about maybe never reaching that level that it was in 2018 and 2019.
So, continuing along on the issue of business, we've seen a lot of new regulations come down the pipe over the last few years. Some of those, were prior to your tenure. Some of them were during your tenure. A lot of adjustments are happening in the marketplace, and if anything, businesses are nimble. They work to keep up with the times. The Boulder Chamber does its best to make sure that our businesses are educated on the new regulations and framework. But can you tell us any other efforts that might be underway this year to allow our businesses to catch up to the new regulations that we're seeing in the marketplace today?
Well, I hope that's top of mind for our legislative delegation, and Representative Amabile and the folks here have been very good on those issues, but it'd be great to reduce unnecessary red tape and regulations. And as I mentioned, for instance, in turning around housing applications, getting that down to 90 days instead of a year, turning around processing time quicker. It'd be great to see the city of Boulder be able to do that on, restaurants and liquor permits and retail permits and all these things, just, turn them around quicker. But yeah, I think that is a very appropriate focus for the legislative work, and we'd love to find ways to streamline those where we can and save time and money. And obviously for businesses, time is money. So the extent we can do things quicker and expeditiously or at lower cost, we'd be very supportive of that work.
Now, moving on from business back to housing, we'll talk about housing and taxes actually. So Proposition HH, something that Boulder Chamber supported. The voters were with us on that one. We saw a special session that addressed residential property taxes. And now we're seeing the county step up here in Boulder to reduce some of those rates given the windfall that we're seeing right now. But we didn't see the same change for commercial property that we saw for residential property. So is there anything that we can look forward to in the next session, looking at what we can do to provide some relief for our commercial property owners as well?
Well, as John knows, and I commiserated with him, I thought HH, and I still do, I think it was by far the best bet, and chambers across the state should have flocked to it and done everything they could to pass it. I don't see any way we can hit that number of tax relief on commercial that was in HH, but for any of it, I was disappointed that wasn't in the package from the general session. It was in our call, but it wasn't in the bill they passed. They just did residential, understandably, so much that was the focus. Would have been nice to see them do commercial. And we still support that and hope that that's included. And I encourage you to have your voice in the, there's a bipartisan property tax commission meeting, and hopefully you've been part of it or will be part of it. I don't remember if any Boulder County residents are part of that. Does anybody remember? I can't remember. I look at the composition of it. But encourage you to provide feedback. They're going to report back to the legislature and us in mid-March with recommendations. Certainly, I hope they include commercial property protection relief. I mean, no policy is perfect, obviously, but the reason that I thought HH worked is that there were three things we're looking to do. Provide immediate relief to homeowners, address the disparities that the Gallagher Amendment created. What is a translation of that? It means we shifted too much of the burden to businesses, and we wanted the biggest deltas between business and residential of any state. So we wanted to address that. That's why I cut commercial rates by 10% or 11%. And the third thing is create a mechanism to prevent us from being back here in 3 years or 6 years where it's some kind of cap on property tax growth going forward. So it did all those things. The only one we were able to do legislatively in the special session, it was the only one we could do, was a short-term relief. That's the one we did. We did it for a year, and that's great. But the other two are still not done. We still need to address the unintended consequences of Gallagher, which created, we have very low property taxes in Colorado. I think we're 48th now. We need a mechanism so they can stay low, but we're like 24th for commercial, and that disparity creates a whole lot of problems. That's playing out in the short-term rental space now. You may or may not be following that, but there's a debate about whether they're commercial or residential. And part of the reason it's such a vitriolic debate is we have such a huge delta between these two rates. I mean, no other state has that. So that work remains to be done, and I hope, again, I think the legislature, working with them, at the very least, we have to extend. We only did 1 year. We have to extend short-term relief, but I'm certainly aiming higher. I hope we can do long-term and address commercial, and those are priorities of ours. And hopefully that'll be items that our legislature can work on.
So I know I want to be mindful of your time as well. I've got a couple minutes left here. So we have a couple of other questions, and then we have one parting gift to present you with as well. So. I don't know why people are laughing about this parting gift, but now that's the question that everyone's wondering about. So but in all seriousness, we've discussed a lot of different issues today. We've talked about regulations on businesses. We've talked about transportation. We've talked about housing. I know Representative Amabile is working on ADU reform. You made some reference to this. There are some strides being made on occupancy limits that the City of Boulder, Mayor Brockett, and others have addressed in their last City Council session. You talked a little bit about this, but wondering if you can expand a little bit on what we can do to not only increase our supply, but increase affordability for our workforce.
Yeah, by the way, thank you, Representative Amabile, for your leadership on accessory dwelling units. Senator Opaquez-Lewis has worked on that issue as well, and I think Representative Brown, you have a housing bill as well, I think. I don't know if you've been introduced together, but we'll be excited about that. And Representative Peretti, super excited about everything housing. So there's a whole, and I think there's a whole suite of things that need to be done. I mean, it's not like you get ADUs and it's solved the housing crisis, or you get construction defects, which I'm sure you guys also support reform, and I support that. But that doesn't, there's those who. And some chambers are in this camp, they think, that's all we need to do, and then it solves it. No, it doesn't, folks. Absolutely, I support it, but there's no one thing. You need to do all of this because the problem is that big around housing. It really is. So, yes, ADUs and transit-oriented development and construction defects and parking requirements and local processes and a number of different things that we are looking at. Very comprehensive package around making housing more affordable. And more affordable for everybody. I think what your question is the sort of capital A affordable housing, and where that's an area where we are not looking to by any means dictate as a state, but we have something called inclusionary zoning. So we want local governments to thoughtfully use that. 20% of a higher number of units is more affordable units than 20% of a lower number of units. So kind of a math thing, right? So we're focused on the more units, including market, but we're totally aware that some of those units will also be what you might call capital A affordable. Just depends on local need and where they are and how they want to use it. But obviously that's a very appropriate part of the mix. And your city council and mayor are very dedicated to that as well and using that. But that, that's kind of you got to have number of units too, right? I mean, like, you know, affordable units where there's not that many new units doesn't mean much. So you got to have the number of units that are being built. And generally, it depends entirely on the development. I mean, obviously, generally the market units are part of what makes something feasible, and that's all fine and good. And frankly, we value socially integrated socioeconomics. I mean, while they exist, and I'm not against them, I'm not a huge fan of like affordable only developments because that's sort of an economic segregation. It's better to have, I think, inclusionary zoning. I love the concept. I mean, have people of different means that are living together, kids are in school together, not like an area of town that has all the affordable units and other area with all the market units. So integrating them is good, and you know, that's a best practice for many cities.
So we've had a few audience questions already, and really interesting one by David, who's also our photographer today. I don't know if he's still here today. There he is. This is to zoom out a little bit. How is the state of other states affecting Colorado? I'll give you an example. In Texas, we not only have migrants coming up from being sent up from Texas, but their restrictive abortion laws and other things are changing how Colorado needs to respond, both in positive and negative ways. So how is the state of other states, we won't just pick on Texas, how is that changing Colorado and what we're doing here?
Well, you know, clearly the focus of our work is our state. We always try to learn from best practices in other states. So sometimes when I talk about housing and transit, I use a line that's very popular in Colorado in both progressive areas and very conservative areas, and that's we don't want to be like California. What do we mean by that? It means different things to different people, but it means we don't want to be we don't want to be a place where the average cost of housing is $1 million. Yes, I know Boulder already is, but we don't want our state to have that. But we also don't want to have 16-lane highways with rush hours from 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. like they literally have in LA area and county. And for those of you who've been there, I mean, you can be there at 3 p.m. and it's rush hour, and there's literally 16 lanes. I didn't believe my speechwriter. I said, show me, and yes, the photograph, there's actually 16 lanes. I mean, it's a behemoth. So it's true. So we want to not become, California from a cost perspective, from a lack of housing planning perspective, from a lack of transit planning perspective, and they are trying to catch up with this stuff now. And I think Colorado, what I don't want, my fear for Colorado, I said this when we were being 213, is that if we don't do this, then we're just going to be doing it in 10 years after we become like that. After we become less livable, more expensive, more congested. We will do these things, but we won't be ahead of the curve, we'll be behind the curve. And so I really hope that we can get a little bit ahead of the curve rather than what California did. They are making a lot of these housing reforms now, and they are missing on transit, but what if they had done it 20 years ago, right? It would be a very different situation than kind of after the fact. I mean, we are, of course, impacted by other states. We have migrants, mostly in Denver. I don't know, maybe there's some that have come to Boulder County, I'm not sure. The state is helping, particularly we're funding legal clinics to help them apply for their paperwork, and we're helping with transportation and logistics. We obviously also operated warming shelters during the cold snap for anybody who needed them so no one froze. We compete with other states for federal funding. We are competing now for a Quantum Hub grant. Boulder and CU are very much a part of that proposal, $75 million. We got through phase one, and we got like $500,000 for the planning or whatever, but we're focused on, and I think it'll be announced in February or early March, whether we are the Quantum Hub. We're competing against Chicago and Illinois on that one, so it's Colorado versus Illinois. We all like Colorado in Colorado. And so we have a friendly cooperation with them. Many of you also know, John Terry knows, I brought the Western governors to Boulder for our meeting as their chair. We had a great meeting. We got to show Boulder. And I'm vice chair of the National Governors Association. I'll be becoming chair in July of this year. So I'm looking forward to continuing that work. Our focus there is around disagree better and how we can be more civil and bring our disagreements to a rational and policy level rather than this all too often level we see in politics of personal attacks and demeaning people's opponents and making enemies out of colleagues that you disagree with. So we continue to work on that.
So I know we're just at about time, and so our wild card question for today, I was so impressed with your State of the State of the Year that you quoted Gandalf. I know, in previous years, right? and talking about, all that we have to do is to decide what to do with the time that's left to us, essentially. And so what we're wondering is, so far in your references to fantasy fiction, which has been your favorite so far? And if you're unsure, if you could just give me Yoda impression again.
Well, it's a little. I have a little Gandalf story. Many of you know I'm a big fan. I was excited that we had Sir Patrick Stewart here in Boulder a few months ago. That was a big thrill for me. It's one of the few perks of being governor is you get to meet people who come to town. But Sir Ian McClellan. So Gandalf, Sir Ian McClellan, who played that role. Of course, I was a fan of the books before the movies, but I have the unique distinction of saying that I've actually kissed Sir Ian McClellan. He kissed me, to be more precise. But I was first elected to Congress in 2008 to represent you, and I don't even remember the event. It was an LGBT thing. He happens to be gay. I think it was the Victory Fund supporting LGBT candidates. They supported me, and he was on stage, and he introduced me, and then he gave me a big kiss. So that's like one of those things I never wanted to wash my face in. But I can say I kissed Gandalf. So I'll publicly share this story. While I was not jealous. But that was, I'm a big fan of all of them. This year we quoted Yoda, as you know, I think I mentioned Jean-Luc Picard as well, President Kennedy, also in that group with those others. But I always enjoy including at least some of the pop culture references. Most notably, though, I am now a platinum recording artist. I had a hit of Jose Feliciano's Feliz Navidad. I did a cover of that just prior to Christmas. And we had 3.5 million views of my cover of Feliz Navidad.
I can only say that I'm looking forward to St. Patrick's Day and what you come up with next. And maybe instead of one of the person being governor, one of the person being Sir Ian McKellen is being able to kiss you. It's one of those things. So with that, we do have a parting gift for you. And so one of our board members, Amy Long, who's been running Nothing But Cake. Amy is still here. But Amy is sitting almost in the front row with Nothing But Cakes. If you don't know anything about the business itself, the opportunities that she provides for people, including people with developmental disabilities, is something that we should all strive towards as we're building to make our workforce more inclusive. But they also make some really damn good cakes. And so I was thinking about your career, in Congress as a baseball player, and I think about your career as governor now. You always swung for the fences. You truly, whether it's universal pre-K, whether it's land use reform, you continue to swing for the fences. But the one exception that I will ask you to do here is accept this bundt cake. I will be here all night.
So I just wanted to have the opportunity to just thank our governor. We are so fortunate to have him as our representative, not for Boulder, but it feels like our governor. And to say that it's such a wonderful thing to see you lead us on so many critical issues, to take the risk to go after addressing those critical issues that for our economy, for our community, and just the relationship we have with you is priceless. So thank you for being a partner with us and a friend. Good to see you in contact.
All right, folks, now begins the stand-up portion of this. Now, in all seriousness, thank you all for your time, your attention, and thank you to those of you who sent us questions so we can make sure that we can get the governor on the record with these issues. These things would not come together without all of you being here, so thank you for being part of our community. Please feel free to enjoy each other's company, enjoy drinks, coffee, and snacks in the back. And I'll be hanging out around front just in case anyone's got some rotten fruit they want to throw my way.